Hi guys, I'm Mark. This is Three Bridges Model Railway. Welcome back. And in this one, I'll sort of give you an introduction to the new section of the layout I'm going to build. So if you watch some of the early ones, you'll know that my layout's created from sort of some of the railway journeys and sort of key moments in my life up to now. So in the early part, have been sort of at the age of 5 on my first railway journey at Wendover, and then at Amersham when I took my first long distance journey on my own at 17. So this section has a station in it that got renamed from a conversation with my wife some years later, and I just thought it was so amusing I would include it in the layout. But also there's quite a lot happening in the track plans at this point, so I will introduce you to that now. Well, we're looking at the Metropolitan line as it runs out of London. So you've got obviously the stations I've been doing so far, so Wendover and Amersham, and then they sort of run into London, go through all these stations down to Harrow on the Hill, and this will be the one where I turn in the corner. And the Chiltern Line trains stop at these ones, and Rickmansworth and Moor Park, and then they run into Harrow on the Hill. So Northwood Hills, Pinner, North Harrow is only for the underground. So I'm going to be creating part of the structure in this part of the layout, and I'll introduce you to it. Okay, so this video is in two parts. So the first part, I'm going to explain the track plans of what I've got to change and introduce, and then when I've gone through all of that, I'll go out to the garage and get on making some of the new framework and stuff. So what's going to be different? So obviously this is the board coming out of Amersham, so I've got my two lines from Chiltern up to London, and I've got my single underground. So the underground just simply splits out into two lines, and it's going to run up to a new station. The main changes that occur are for the DC line. So my Chiltern line, I've got a new Risborough line, so this is the new line into Aylesbury that I need to have. I've got a new goods line that's going to come out of London from a small goods yard. It just creates some more interest to the way I want to run it, and it allows me to run goods traffic up to Aylesbury. And I'm also going to have a spur off this goods line, crosses all the other lines, and it will join up with my DC West Coast line. So it's all the DC parts of the layout. Obviously, as you've sort of seen, the incline at the back for my DC West Coast and my DCC East Coast lines are raised up at this point. So I'm going to have a tunnel portal so that the lines that are running behind Amersham hidden, sort of revealed, and there's a small scenic section, and I'll talk a bit about later about what I'm going to do there. But there'll be a spur off, and this will be a girder bridge, and it'll effectively run across the underground, the Chiltern lines, the new line up from the Chiltern line, and join in to effectively what becomes the goods line into London. So that's one thing I've got to add, and I've got to work out the height and the rises to get across there. So at this point it's about 12 centimetres above the deck. So by the time I've got over to here, I'm down to about 9 centimetres above the deck. And so the goods line here that's going to run up to Aylesbury will now start to decline, and in order to join up so that my Chiltern line can connect to it, I will need to have a split off here, have a slight incline, and at some point these two lines will be at the same height and they can join together. I don't know what point that will happen. I suppose the main point to get across is that all the lines in this section are not now on the lower deck framework. They're all at various heights progressing across this section, which is about 3 meters in length. So I've got to work out the height of the different lines at the different stages. And at the moment, I don't have a clear design or plan for any of that. I sort of work it out as I go along, make it up as I go along. So after a bit more thought, I ended up with this drawing. Probably doesn't mean a lot to you looking at it. It means a lot to me. So this is where I was just trying to work out how I would do the DC power blocks so that I can run trains on these basically short sections, the inclines, the bits here, and the girder bridge. And basically you don't need to power any of these new sections. they will draw the power depending on where the position of the points from the existing and one new power block that I've got two new power blocks I've got to create. So what do I mean by that? So for a good train running down on my West Coast line, it basically changes the points, it then goes onto the viaduct, the train stops, I change the points back so it's safe to the main line to run, and then I've basically got a new power block that I'm going to have from my goods station in London, and that will then, by changing the points, that allows you to pull the train down to London. Same as when you're going back, you go back up, stop on the viaduct, change the points over, and the main West Coast power block will then operate the train. Same going up to Aylesbury, so you basically come up the goods line, stop on this section here, change the points, and then I've got a new power block for my DC Risborough line, and that will then take the train forward. And again, if I'm taking a bubble car or a small carriage train on the Risborough line and I want to go up to Marylebone, I'd basically stop on the incline, change the points over so that the Marylebone Chiltern up line then basically pulls the train forward. So it keeps it sort of simple for me, but I did need to work it out in my head that I could control the train at all the various positions just by using points and allowing for the, this is line of flow of power. There must be a phrase for it. It eludes me at this moment. One of the other things I'm going to introduce in here is for the points, is how I'm going to change them. So obviously my DCC line, I'm going to use point motors. That'll be a new thing for me, never done that before. But if you've watched any of the earlier episodes, you'll know that for my Aylesbury and Marylebone, I'm going to use levers, mechanical levers, using bell cranks and levers to operate the points. And I thought it'd be fun to do this section as well, primarily because every point is at a different height now above the deck, whereas at Aylesbury they'll all be flat and it's a lot easier. Life's too short, isn't it? Give yourself a challenge. So for the scenics, I've gone back to the original sketch and just added a bit more detail in. So with my incline at the back, where I've got my East Coast and West Coast lines, at this point they're also hidden behind Amersham. So I'm going to have them come out through a tunnel so you can actually see them at this part with obviously an embankment. You'll then see where the crossover is, the start of Bridge Cross, and then it'll go into another tunnel portal to be hidden so that I can have a small village scene behind my new station, but it'll be very much quite flat. I'm going to have to play with perspective. And obviously at Moore Park there is a foot tunnel underneath the station, so the station is on an embankment effectively and you can walk underneath, and what you do is you actually access the platforms, the steps up from this tunnel underneath. It looks a bit like an underground tunnel actually, it's all tiled, and you then travel up onto the platform that sits between the tracks. Obviously I've got one bridge spanning everything, but this being 3 bridges, I need to get 3 bridges into this scenic section as well, so a little bit of a thought about how I do that. I've got a couple of ideas at the moment. Okay, so coming back to my new station, Moore Park. So there's various times in your life where somebody says something and it just sticks in your memory, and this is one of those times. I was travelling up to London with my wife, so we were probably in our early 30s now, and she sort of burst out laughing and confessed that she'd renamed this station much earlier when we were in our early 20s. And I sort of found it quite amusing, and it ended up being stuck in my memory as well, and I've always known it as this new name. So I thought I'd include it. It's not going to take you much imagination to guess what she renamed Moore Park. Anyway, we'll cover the build of that later. Right, we're back in the loft. So I appreciate that took quite a long time to explain. As you know, I'm sort of documenting the build of this, really. It's not a how to do, it's more what I did. So what I've realized from doing Amersham is quite tricky, even just doing the scenics up here, because there's quite short tolerance between the two levels. So I think it's going to be sensible to do all the initial framework stuff and for the various inclines, for the various lines that I've got, and work on it all in the garage to get the risers in for the various lines, do the sub beds for the various lines, lay the track so that I can also look at how I'm going to do the mechanical point operation for the 8 points I've got, and probably just to, because there's so much embankments and terrain to build, I'll do that down in the garage as well, because it'd be quite messy with plaster Paris cloth doing it up here. That'll then allow that all to sort of fix up, and then with this section, the little short section, I've got to do it there, and then obviously there will be another section that runs along the front. I can bring the 3 sections up to the loft, bolt them together, install the bridge over, because that's the bit that will link the 2 sections, finish off the rest of the scenics and the station bills and stuff like that. Right, good morning. So next day, back in the garage, back in my happy place. So I brought the open framework down. I've marked out where the roof trusses come through, so I know how to avoid those. And I've got 2 points of reference from what's existing upstairs in the loft. So this is where the incline finishes currently. I've measured up the height, so that's my point of reference for the incline to carry on down. And this board represents the end of the Chiltern line from the Amersham Station scenic. So I know I have to sort of finish here. So what I'm going to do next is lay out some track, almost like in 2D, just to sort of see where I think things fit in terms of where I could then bring that goods line spur across on the long bridge, across all the other tracks, and see if it will, can I get it through between this gap, between the roof struts, or is it the next one down? So I'll do that first and then come back and show you what my thoughts are. These sort of rise, these are basically where the roof struts come through, and I also know this one is where I've also got another B frame that will hold the various decks. So between here and here is going to be my 2 tunnel portals for the East Coast and West Coast line, and this will be sort of my diorama for where I'm doing the electrification of the East Coast line. So they'll come out the tunnel portal, we'll go through the first set of 3 points that then allows you to split across, the girder bridge across. I'm going to split out the underground line here so that it feeds up, and they're effectively going to go, it's roughly the position of my new station. At this point in the plan, I need to then have another spur that's coming along the front that becomes my Risborough line, and I also need to take a point off these 2, which is my Chiltern line for the Risborough line. So the question is, where do I do it? So going back to the original drawing I had, I've sort of got it happening in this section. I'll try that first. I think it's just, yeah, because there's just going to be too much going on in front of the other station, I think, otherwise. Okay, I think I'm quite happy with the positioning I've got. So the things I've been checking on is that where the points are, they're not going to foul with any of the roof struts, so I don't seem to bring the wires through. And so I've got my 3 points here, they're fine, that one's clear, this one will be clear, and then the other ones down there are clear. And again, anything that's at the front, this side of the roof struts, is fine because I've got complete access along the front here. Okay, so rip the sheet down. So I've built the next incline board, and I've started on the framework for this section here. So it's just gluing up. What is next? You need to mark out where the points are going to start, and then that'll be my starting point for the line coming across. So okay, so it's been a good day. So the incline, main incline's sorted, and as you can see, I've got it propped up at this end and sort of braced in to the back, and I've made the second shorter framework board, and as you can sort of see the scale of it, it's it's a bit huge. So what are we, 1.8, 1.2, it's 3 meters long, so it's pretty much, yeah. But obviously as I build it, I will make it such that I can then split it into 4 parts. So there'll be the 2 back decks and then the front sections. So just trying to decide at the moment where, as I know that's where the roof struts go through. So I haven't put this one brace in yet because I just need to work out where the points are going to go here. I'll do that tomorrow. I've allowed for, so this is where the next B frame goes round, and I've got my starting point for my cross bridge. So what I think I need to do next is make the subframe for this section and for this section, so that I can then start looking at how the incline of the bridge works. But that's for tomorrow, don't know for today. Hi, so it's the day of the summer solstice, so longest day of the year. Nice point to always get to in the year. I've done the extended framework. I'm trying to show you. So it basically, this is the furthest out that the lower deck will get. As you can see, it's quite a distance to the back, about 1 meter I think. Left it very simple at the moment. I will put in cross struts and stuff as I work out where the various risers need to go. So I'll basically, I haven't got a grand plan, I'm just making it up as I go along. It tends to be the way I work. So what I do know is, so this whole structure will basically slide in and bolt onto the extensions that are part of the B frame and the lower deck. So I know I can fit this inside the loft once this is in place, and then it basically slides in around the roof struts, and this is one of the cutouts around a roof strut. So I know, again, so the roof strut effectively goes like that, so I know that this will sit the other side of it, and obviously I've got then that space to give this a bit more rigidity as and when. So what I'll do next is, I know this is the starting point for the points across, so I'm going to put the points in place and just sort of tack them so they've got a set position. I'll drill the holes for where the point wires need to come through for later on, so I can mechanically change the points. I have no idea at the moment how I'm going to do that, because I basically got to drop down from to here and then come across through, but that's a problem for another day. And then what I'll do is I'll look at where I wanted that first, the bridge to come across, and obviously keeping the same level of incline down, whereabouts it needs to end up, somewhere about here. So I'll fix the end of the bridge with an angled strut both sides, and then that'll be my reference point to then work out where my next point needs to go, and effectively the risers that will come here for the incline up for the London, what am I calling it, the London freight line, and then obviously the point off, which will then start to then descend here down for my Ridgeborough line. That will then get me, so I do the same incline 2% at some point over here. I will then work out where, what do I have to work out first? Do that, start doing the incline down. I then start working out the incline up for the Chiltern lines so that they come under the bridge. As to why the underground and the Chiltern line are coming up, there's 2 reasons. So one, obviously, if you saw earlier on, the new station is on a small embankment, but as I start to go into Harrow on the Hill, you turn the corner, there's, what happens with Harrow on the Hill? There's 6 lines going to Harrow on the Hill. There are the 2 lines for the Chiltern, 2 lines for the Amersham line, and then there's 2 lines for Uxbridge, and they're basically all coming out here, and the Uxbridge lines are in the middle, sort of. So one Amersham line goes one side of the Uxbridge lines, there's a pair of them. One Amersham line goes the other side of the Uxbridge lines, and then obviously you've got the 2 Chiltern lines, and then the Uxbridge lines have to come underneath the Amersham down line and the Chiltern lines, and effectively comes to the front, and then we'll carry on down to Uxbridge Station, which I'm building as a separate thing. Sounds confusing? Yeah, well, now you know where my brain is at. We'll see how we get on. It's all fun. Right, cup of tea, and then I'll make a start on the incline across. So as you probably guess, I don't have this grand track plan drawn out with all my everything detailed in advance. I sort of work it out as I go along. So I don't actually know what the height of these risers need to be at all yet. So the way I'm doing it is, I know that this back board is at the right incline of the 2%, and so this is going to be my reference point. So looking down vertically, this is where I want the bridge to come across. I know it's going to clear the roof strut there, and it'll come through the gap. So the first support at this end, I want it to be here. So what I will do is, basically the riser sits on the top of the subframe and supports the baseboard from underneath. So if I measure the distance from the top of this baseboard, which is set on the subframe, to the top of this baseboard, that is the right height that I need the incline from the baseboard below to sit underneath here. So I measure that distance, create my riser, and it'll be angled, and then I'll work out how to attach it in on a cross strut, and then I'll do exactly the same at the other end. So I want the other end of the bridge support will be here. So basically working back, I've got a mark there, so I'll measure the distance from there to the top of the frame there, and that'll be the exact height that needs to be there. So as it comes across, it's still going down at roughly the 2%. I suppose I could have measured the length and then worked it across. So it's going to be slightly longer, but it'll be less of an incline effectively. Or do I just measure the distance? It's a good point, isn't it? So yeah, I suppose the other way is to measure the distance from that point to that point, measure it down, measure the height, and that's where I want it to be at this point. Right, plan B then. Nope, must be feeding time. So I've got it in, the angle seems to work. So obviously this joint into the main frame, I can't do that till it's finally up in the loft, so I've just temporarily half screwed it, and I've put a red mark. I'm putting a red mark around everything that I know is like a removable screw that I need to dismantle before I take it up to the loft to then put it in. So I have my incline across. This is working a treat, a simple tool. I know you could go out and buy one of these, but I just love the fact that Harry built it 90 years ago. He made it 90 years ago, part of his apprenticeship, and it works as good today as probably when he first made it. Apologies for the background noise. It's Friday afternoon, it's sunny, everyone's getting away for the weekend. So this is how I built my risers. So that's the height I want. So this one's 86. So I basically glue on a block so that it just sits perfectly at the height I want. So I can do the accurate measurement down here. I'm not trying to faff around in the loft, clamping it and trying to screw it and get it exactly where I want. Okay, I'll try and film this, but it's just started raining, so it's a bit noisy in the garage roof. Okay, so I've got the risers in for the start of my goods line out of London, so that they then have the spur across for the girder bridge, over to the West Coast line, and then obviously this will be the Princess Risborough line, or Risborough line as I call it. And so if you take the bottom side of this, so this is where the bottom of the bridge will actually go, then I've got a height between the deck below and the end side of the bridge, so I can work out how much of an incline I can get away with before I sort of hit the bridge. So I should probably explain the intro and this device. This is a sliding bevel, allows you to mark up angles, and I've been using it to do the cross struts for the inclines. So this belonged to Harry, who was my wife's mother's father, so known as Little Grandpa to my wife and her sisters, and he worked at the Wolverton carriage depot, which was, the time he worked there, it was probably under British Rail control, and he was an apprentice carpenter, and as part of his apprenticeship he had to make his own tools. So this was actually made by Harry about 90 years ago, I think, and it's a very lovely thing to use, and I'm certainly enjoying it, and some of the other tools that he had, and he actually made it himself as well. You'll see more of those later. Okay, I think I'll call this one for now, as there's enough content, and it's getting up to about half an hour, which is a bit longer than I normally like to do them. So I'll catch you next time, maybe when I'll be making more progress on the risers and the track plans.